Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton Knave, Deep Purple, Kneel and Pray. That's the next one. This is Mark 2. We're into Mark 2. Still in 1969 though. 4th of October 1969. This is fairly obscure one. Legend has it that Evans and Simper weren't good enough. That was the general message put out there, that they weren't good enough and they needed better players. Is that true? It can't be a coincidence that they were the ones complaining. Certainly in Simper, there was nothing wrong with Simper's bass playing. They were complaining to the management. Even at that stage, something very obviously poppy. Not that it isn't great, but I mean, by this time, this is October '69. Cream have been and gone, I think, and Led Zeppelin are already ruling the world, etc. And the story goes that Richie Blackmore wanted to go heavier, wanted a Robert Plant wailing singer, but Roger Glover was a songwriter. I think that's the key to it. So they got a new bass player as well. So of course they didn't tell either of them, and they carried on touring. That they'd been replaced. It does sound like a bit of a fluke, the Roger Glover thing. I mean, Nick Simper just happened to not be there. They were booked for a single session to record Hallelujah. They recorded the backing tracks for that in the morning. He went somewhere in the afternoon and then came back in the evening to finish off the song, and they were going to tell him in the evening that they'd replaced Rod Evans, but in the afternoon they decided on Roger Glover, who apparently only came along just for the ride, just to come and see him. Is that the session where he wrote the Speed King riff? If it is, that explains everything, really. Don't know. It's not clear if that's actually true. So in the evening they just didn't tell Simper either. So Mark 1 continued to gig through June. The last gig was the 4th of July. This is the 4th of October, so it's a bit later. And Hallelujah, technically the last Mark 1 thing, although the concerto is also the last Mark 1 thing. Definitely Mark 1 pop. They didn't write it. Gillan thought it was rubbish. The vocal performance is fantastic, as it happens. Then the third album comes out in the midst of all that, and at one point, they had Deep Purple, the concerto, and In Rock all in the charts at once. So there are 2 shows from this era. Okay, Amsterdam is from August. So although Mark II only formed in July and August is very early on, that performance is missing the poppy songs. This has got a longer set list, which is a bit more interesting. Plus, only this one is official. That was the official one. They didn't release the Amsterdam one on the Sonic Zoom series. And by this time they've recorded the concerto, so they should be a little bit more self-assured. Should be. I think this has better sound than the Amsterdam one. It's not particularly high-grade sound, but it was never bootlegged until released in 2003. This was literally kept in the vaults. It really was a tape in the vaults that they just had, which is amazing. I mean, people must have just forgotten about it. Management officially recorded this. It's not clear why. Okay, so let's do the songs. So the first song is Kneel and Pray. Working title for Speed King was originally called Ricochet very early on. It's definitely worth hearing both versions. I mean, we've got an early version of actual Speed King, which is almost finished in a bit, and we've also got this working version. It's nearly finished at this stage, so it is nearly Speed King. It's basically just the chorus missing. And in Amsterdam, it's quite a bit earlier. The vocal melody isn't there. It's not very melodic at that point. But the end of this month, it will be named Speed King and be pretty much complete. What we don't have is the interplay in the middle section. It just goes down and back up again. So yeah, that's worth a listen. Then we have Hush, which was still in the set, soon to be removed from the set and replaced with Into the Fire, actually, but not yet. Yeah, so nice bit of interplay between John and Ian Pace. Predictably more dynamics than later on. Much better than the Albert Hall performance. Obviously, they must have been very nervous. Everyone says they prefer the Rod Evans performance of Hush rather than Gillan. It kind of doesn't suit his voice, but this is certainly better than the Albert Hall one. Then we have Child in Time. It's a good... the first bit is a good, very clean version of early Child in Time. Not as reserved, obviously the concerto version is very reserved and very straight. And then we go into the solo. It's generic, great solo. It's kind of coming to be like a perfect version of early Child in Time. He does some sort of weird slide, or he throws the guitar or something, makes a weird noise, and he goes wildly out of tune. And then he starts playing some pretty cool dissonant stuff with the out of tuneness. It is notable how much heavier it got later on, particularly Roger. The dun 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 makes it less heavy than it got later. Last bit, Gillan suffers a bit from having quite a bad mic. It's not his performance; it's just the mic is terrible. So that stops it being perfect. But yeah, again, really good version. Child in Time and originally Ricochet, which became Speaking, were the only new songs at this point. I think they'd already written some, but they weren't performing them. But those two were written very early on, and I think stylistically they're slightly different to the other songs in Rock. You can tell the other songs on In Rock are written having known what the band sounds like and what they should be doing. And obviously Child in Time is based on Bombay Calling. And then Familiar Setlist, very similar to 1970. It's Wring That Neck. We've got a 20-minute Wring That Neck. This is the first properly lengthy one. There's going to be a few of them. So, first solo, very energetic. John's always really good on that bit when he takes the first solo. Richie then does the quieter bit. Unlike most performances where he lets rip at that point, he does a more relaxed version. He can do one or the other depending on the performance. The actual solos, once we finish the main song, John now has a solo, which wasn't there originally. Remember, it was just a guitar solo. And he does that descending riff thing he does. That's pretty good. Then we're back into the riff and into the guitar solo. The guitar solo is visual stuff. I think this is the thing. It is of less interest to listen to. Obviously, visually, it was things like he does these little hammer-on and pull-offs, and he has a drink while he's doing it, things like that. And obviously, on the recording, he's just sitting there going. We're on to disc 2. So Paint It Black obviously comes after Wring That Neck. We all know that. That was the drum solo before the Mule. I've never been completely convinced by it. Obviously, Paint It Black is a fantastic melody. Remember, it's too many arpeggios. I don't know. It's never convinced me. Led Zeppelin were the same. They had a riff called Pat's Delight for the drum solo, and that's completely forgettable actually. And obviously, everyone knows the one on Led Zeppelin 2. This is kind of the same thing. Everyone knows the Mule solo, which of course wasn't a drum solo originally, and not this one. I think the intro is more intense at this point than it got later. I do tend to skip it. I'm not a drum solo person. Ian Pace is one of my favourite drummers, but there's not enough there for me. It is overly long. They get 10 minutes for the band to have a break, really, and for people in the audience to go to the toilet. Although I don't think they did in those days. It is also different in person, though. I think. If you're at a concert, you're more engaged with it. So obviously, I had to sit through it for this review, and I was sitting there waiting for the one-handed drum thing he does. He doesn't do it on this one. So obviously that must have come later. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't even listen to them, so I wouldn't know. Then we have Mandrake. Then we have Mandrake Root. Gillan tearing through this Rod Evans song is something to behold. This is definitely better with Ian Gillan. Just suits his voice, you know. Unfortunately, someone forgot to turn on the mic for the first verse. But never mind. There's better ones to come. That's the thing with these Deep Purple live albums. There's always something. It's just the nature of the sort of free approach to it, and the energy means there's nothing perfect about any of it. Then we get to the instrumental bit. Okay, that's what we're really here for. The first section of Mandrake Root obviously is the 2-chord thing, not like they did later with Space Trucking. Dum 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 dum. Fairly creative John solo. Still very free at this point. Later on it will get more sort of intensity. Tiny bit of something that sounds like the Mule to me for 4 minutes. That keyboard bit of Mandrake Root is always the highlight for me. Then we have the generic Blackmore solo for this particular era. It is striking how slow it is compared to how it got later on. It got faster and faster and faster. Still far ahead of the album version. Forget the album version. It's still great, you know. And the other thing is obviously you've got to listen to a guitar sacrifice without the visuals. Is that a listenable thing? Don't know. There's a few new bits after that bit which have been added. There's a sort of percussive keys and drums thing when John Lord does his percussive thing, and a whole load of random guitaring where they're just messing around, and that's it. That's Mandrake Root. So by this point, and I question the sort of last bit of Mandrake Root, whether we're just it sounds like they're a bit lost, you know, maybe, but the rest of it has so much energy. It's great. So then we got the surprise, because the encore is Kentucky Woman. They haven't written Black Knight, obviously. So this is the only recording of them playing this. You know, Roger Glover did say they played quite a few Mark I songs early on. He did say they played Help. There is a set list that was released recently which didn't have Help on it, but it had some other stuff on it. So yeah, it's a good listen. It's worth checking out. 2 discs, obviously. I suspect you're not going to be able to get it. Not this one. So it would have to be YouTube. Never mind. Alright, see you next time.